Hollywood car 717. This solid red paint scheme was the first Pacific Electric paint scheme that these cars appeared in. They later appeared in the famous butterfly paint scheme. If you go to Car House 4, you can see another Hollywood car painted in that more famous butterfly paint scheme. That's on display in Car House number 4. So these cars, 160 of these, served Los Angeles into the 1950s. This one was restored here at the museum shortly after it came in the 1960s, and then we recently repainted it again into this very beautiful red paint. Okay, Pacific Electric 717, come on down. Car to come around the corner is a narrow gauge yellow car, one of the city street cars from Los Angeles. This is car number 1201. This was built in 1921, and it was the first of 250 of this type of car. This was the Los Angeles Railway's first double truck steel type car. Before this, all of the street cars in Los Angeles were wood. You'll see a wooden Los Angeles here later. This car is something of a pioneer in the preservation movement here in Los Angeles. And it was, in 1955, it was given to the city of Inglewood, who put it on display in Centinela Park. Unfortunately, it only lasted a couple of weeks. It got vandalized, and they decided, you know, maybe that wasn't the best idea. So at that time, the fledgling Orange Empire Traction Company, which was the predecessor of the Railway Museum, acquired the car. They moved it to Travel Town in Los Angeles, which is where the museum's first collection of cars was. And then in 1958, 1959, when they moved out here, it was moved out here. So that's car number 1201. Thank you. That's coming is Los Angeles Railway 3001. Now, 3001 was the first of the streamlined PCC type cars that were delivered in 1937. Now you may wonder, what does PCC mean? It does not stand for Pasadena City College.
No, the next one.
PCC stands for President's Conference Committee, and what that referred to was, in the 1930s, the street railway industry in the United States was really falling on hard times. They were losing a lot of customers to, well, not only the Depression, but automobiles were becoming more and more accessible. More and more people had them. So the President's Conference Committee came up with a new streetcar design that would try to save the street railway business, something that would be more attractive to riders, something that would be faster, something that would be easier to maintain, and something more, most importantly, that all of the different streetcar companies across the country could buy. So in 1937, this was the first of the eventually 150 or so PCC cars that Los Angeles Railway bought. Now the fun thing about this car was the first two PCCs to debut in Los Angeles were christened by none other than Shirley Temple, the child actress. In 1937, this car and 3002 were put in front of City Hall with a cover over them, and they got a big crowd, and they pulled the cover off and unveiled the new streetcars to the public, and Ms. Temple christened the car along with the mayor. If you go to our website, there is a video of Shirley Temple at that event with 3001 here and 3002 unveiling the cars and talking to the cameras. It's really worth watching. It's really pretty cute. So you'll notice how streamlined and how fancy this car is compared to the 1921 version that just passed. Also, if you ride on it, you'll notice how much quieter it is than the old car. Okay, 3001, come on down. Yes, and somebody said, it looks like the school bus. Well, I like to say that the school bus looks like it. It was a predecessor. But that's okay, we get that on. So, okay, this is 3100 now. This is another PCC type car. This was built in 1943, and this car was built in at the height of World War II. At that time, street railway companies were not able to get, generally speaking, new streetcars. But Los Angeles, because it had such a concentration of critical war-related industries, they were able to appeal to the War Production Board to get more streetcars, which they desperately needed. And so 3100 was built in 1943. Now, I meant to point it out on the other one, which I'll just point it out now. On the other car, things like this were chrome and also the stanchions inside. On this car, because it was built during World War II, they could not get chrome and other strategic war materials, so they substituted painted steel for the bumpers and for the stanchions inside. This car came complete through the museum, and we've pretty much run it continuously. Last year, we were able to do a refurbishment where we repainted inside and out, and we added the Take This Car to Bullock's downtown sign back on the front. Just like the buses today, the Los Angeles Railway and its successors sold transit advertising, and so we've added that little piece of Los Angeles back to try and remind people that yes, it did run to Los Angeles. Okay, 3100, come on down. Is Los Angeles Transit Lines 3165. This is the last of the 165 PCC cars from Los Angeles. Railway museums like to do things like that. They get to get the first and the last. I don't know why that is. But anyway, so 3165 was the very last of the PCC type cars. And I'm kidding around about it, but significantly, this was the last new streetcar delivered to Los Angeles. Prior to the current day, when of course now we have light rail blanketing the Los Angeles region, and there's a very good proposal downtown to return city streetcars to the streets of downtown Los Angeles. So this, up until now, this is the last new streetcar delivered to Los Angeles, and I think that'll change in a couple of years when they buy a new generation of modern streetcars. This car was built in 1948 and was retired at the end of streetcar service in 1963. It has the green paint scheme of the Los Angeles MTA, and eventually most of the remaining PCC cars were painted in this green paint scheme. So we have this one for sure. Okay, 3165, come on now.
It's okay.
Yes, please keep back from the moving streetcars. Okay, now here's something a little bit unusual. This is Los Angeles Railway's train car 9225. Now, the 9225 was built by the Los Angeles Railway in 1912. They built a lot of their own work equipment. The purpose of this car is it's a crane, and you can use it to pick things up and set them back down, but you can use it to haul things to the job and carry them away. Notice the way that the cab is cut out here. This little cutout in the cabin so that you could lay long pieces of rail down the side of the deck here, for example. On the deck is an interesting little piece of Los Angeles history. When the streetcars were running and were the primary public transit in the city, if you had a major fire and you wanted to keep the streetcar service moving past the scene of the fire, you had to accommodate both the fire hoses and the streetcars. So you could lay these, they're called hose jumpers. You lay these hose jumpers on the track, and the fire department could string their hoses underneath, and the streetcars would literally go up onto this little bridge and then back down again. You could actually keep the streetcar service running past the scene of a major fire. Although today it's a little hard to imagine. I don't think the fire department today would want the streetcars still running while they were fighting a fire. But back then, I think it was a little bit of a different approach. So the crane on the car rotates all the way around. You can pick stuff up with it and set it back down. It actually still works, and in fact during the antique truck show a couple of weeks ago, one of our members was doing a demonstration with the crane. Okay, 9225, come on down. Oh yes, a 9225 has the arrow with which the motorman is very fond of. City streetcars did not have air whistles. They just had that call that Earl is ringing there on the 665. Now, 665, if we had to select one Los Angeles Railway yellow car from our collection to be most representative of the city, it would be the 665. These were called Huntington Standards, and standard meaning the standard streetcar of Los Angeles. They had almost 750 of this type of car at one time, and this was the car that Los Angeles grew up with throughout the teens and into by the 1920s, as you saw the car 1201. By the 1920s, they had started to acquire steel cars, but this was the original wooden streetcar in Los Angeles. Now notice the basket on the front. You also see that on the 1201. The city of Los Angeles required any of the street railway companies to have these fenders for the protection of the public. The idea was, if you were unfortunate enough to step out into the street in front of the streetcar, you would fall back into this basket and be scooped up prior to being crushed. Prior to being crushed by the wheels. I think I pushed the wrong button. Hey, Mr. Soundman. It's good to have the Soundman. Anyway, the 665 just has fixed steps on it. Now, that's the other thing that always amazed me about these streetcars. Imagine in today's era where we're trying to make transit and life in general accessible to people with disabilities, walking up and down these steps. I mean, even for an able-bodied person, this was a lot of work. But for an older person, or if you had crutches, or even worse, I can't imagine how you got up and off of these cars. I would imagine that if you were in a big line of people and the person in front of you was having trouble getting up the steps, you just help them up, or maybe pull them up from the top. We've come a long way in making transit accessible in this country, so this is an interesting look back into the past. Okay, one last thing to mention about 665. It was saved by the movie studios. We have a number of cars here at the museum that the movie studios saved. In 1947, they were done with this car. It lasted through World War II. And in 1947, they sold it to Fox Studios, who used it as a movie prop. We were able to get the car in the 1960s, in 1967, in fact, from Fox Studios. And they had really never done anything with it. It was just a complete streetcar. So to be able to acquire old, complete, original streetcar like this in 1967 was only possible because in 1947 the movie studio had purchased it. Okay, 665, come on down. Now this one here is really interesting. This is actually from Kansas. This is the little electric switch locomotive. Hutchison and Northern #1. I can't really talk about it because it's so loud. But we actually use this locomotive for switching. Notice the big, well, first of all, notice the happy passengers inside. There's a very small capacity though. It has one operator and 2 passengers. But of course it wasn't for moving people, it was for moving boxcars. Notice the General Electric logo on the side. That was because it was built as a demonstrator, meaning they built this to show other electric railroads in the 1920s what kind of neat little electric switchages they made. Anyway, somehow the Huntington and Northern Railway in Kansas, which served a salt mine in Kansas, ended up with this thing, and when they were done, they were able to donate it to the museum in I believe in the 1970s. Anyway, we repainted it into its original orange paint scheme, and we do still use it as an electric switchage. Okay, H&N number 1, come on down.
All right, go ahead. Here we go. Guys, we're giving 2.
Now this is a neat locomotive too. This is a much larger freight locomotive. This is Pacific Electric 1624. It was built in 1924 by the Pacific Electric Railway in their Torrance shops. Pacific Electric had a huge shop facility in Torrance, California, and they built a lot of their own equipment and maintained it, did all the heavy maintenance there at Torrance. Anyway, this was one of a group of electric locomotives that they built in their own shops. And the Pacific Electric was the second largest originator of online freight in the state of California. They were a huge freight operation as well as their passenger operations. In fact, a number of the light rail lines that are in Los Angeles now, for example, the Expo line, which the first part of which just opened up, and the second part is going to open up in about 3 years all the way out to Santa Monica. That was a former Pacific Electric freight operation, and 1624 and its fellow electric locomotives switched that operation. 1624, there was the electric freight operation on the Pacific Electric lasted until January 1958, and this was one of the last 1 or 2 of the electric locomotives. There was still a switching assignment on Santa Monica Boulevard in West Hollywood, where they were required to use electric locomotives into the beginning of 1958. So this one and another one survived a little bit longer than the rest of them. And then it was donated to the National Railway Historical Society and put on display at the Pomona Fairgrounds. And then in 1960, in turn donated it to the museum. This is a candidate for restoration. It does still work. It needs some mechanical work, and we're not afraid to say it does need a paint job. But it's on the list of locomotives to be restored. Everybody say hi to Ryan.
Hi, Ryan.
Ryan is not only one of our operators, but he's also a great mechanic, and he enjoys working on this locomotive. Okay, 1624, come on down. Now, I think that may be all we have in the queue, and what's going to happen now is they'll all run around again one more time. Does anybody have any questions or anything more about the trolleys or the museum?